What happens when you abandon a once thriving garden? When nature has had 5 years to reclaim her territory? Is there still food to be found? Are there still plants worth salvaging? And what do we do to reclaim a completely overgrown garden? We're back in Washington, and today we have an incredibly rare opportunity to tour our old homestead that we left 5 years ago when we moved to Tennessee that has basically remained untouched since we left. We're gonna see if anything from my former garden is still salvageable. Oh my gosh, my rhubarb! Talk about how to actually reclaim this as a growing space. This soil doesn't need fertilizer. And then of course, we'll take a little walk down memory lane on our old farm together. Let's do this. If you've been around this channel for a while, you might remember that 5 years ago when we suddenly decided to move to Tennessee and handed this farm over, we actually sold it to another family that was hoping to farm here. They were so eager to take the torch that we were veritably passing them that they wanted everything the same, from the wood shop, the blacksmith shop, even down to all the same kinds of animals. So before we left, we helped them set this place back up, basically exactly like we had it. But then they unfortunately had some family and some health issues that they had to deal with, so they actually had to pass it on to someone else. And that's what's led to the farm no longer being the focus of the family that now lives here. And you will never believe what this new family is actually using the farm for now. Stick around and we'll show you when we tour the rest of the farm. Right off the bat, just looking around, you're gonna see this place is totally overgrown. There's grasses and greens that don't belong here galore. And the most egregious of those is every Washington gardener's absolute gardening bane, the buttercup. Now, if you remember from our Weeds Are Good video, buttercup are a fantastic indicator that our soil really needs some more lime. And so if we were to come back into this garden right away and start dealing with this problem, our first step would be to add some lime to the soil and deal with that problem from the root up. And the lime is a great start, but if I actually wanted to turn this into a productive garden the laziest way possible, there's a handful of other things I do too, which we'll get into shortly. So let's actually look around. Everywhere I look, rhubarb, 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 rhubarb! There's gold in these hills. Rhubarb custard pie is my favorite food in the entire world. I learned how to make it with my grandma the old-fashioned way, but I planted rhubarb in hopes of someday having a rhubarb forest. And boy howdy, is there rhubarb to be found now. If only I could be this successful growing rhubarb in Tennessee. I definitely don't remember the road noise being like this, but I think I was probably used to it back then. Really puts things into perspective. Oh my gosh, look, strawberries everywhere you look. All through here used to be my strawberry garden, so these guys must have just climbed out and started populating the earth. And I distinctly remember planting this strawberry field for Adam because strawberries are his favorite fruit. And I sang to him, "Strawberry fields forever," because back then, this was my definition of a strawberry field. Boy howdy how things change. So it's really actually kind of incredible that this hoop house is still, like, even the plastic is still good. I mean, it's been 5 years, and boy howdy, it's really stood the test of time. So this is literally a one-day project. Cattle panels bent over, greenhouse plastic stretched around a little wooden frame. My mom and I built this together one Saturday 8 years ago. This is wild. So cool. Here we've got some invasive Himalayan blackberries, which are another real bane of Seattle area gardening. These have some brown rot on them. We don't want that, but look right here. My Snohomish Garden Center Concord grapes, still here. Actually, there used to be a little grape arbor here, and it came down to these ones down here as well, but it must have collapsed or something during a storm. Classic Ann of all trades craftsmanship right there. Oh, the beehives seem to, I think the bees might have left. These have definitely seen some better days. Oh yeah, there's all the carcasses of all the dead bees. One pretty wild thing about bees is that if you just leave them here, bees will come and swarm and move into these, and they would actually clean up the hives. It would just take them a couple days to get all the mold, all the residue and everything cleaned up. They would actually have a great foundation to come in and move in and start making honey pretty dang quick, which is why I like beekeeping so much, because I hate cleaning and the bees do it all for us. This very, very sad Italian plum tree is like an advertisement for our You're Probably Killing Your Fruit Trees video series on my channel. What happened here is that all of the new growth was basically pruned away or lion-tailed away from this over time, and all of the growth was sent outward and outward and outward. And so now when there's any new growth, any fruit, any weight, it is all leveraged against these huge arms. I mean, if you've ever sat on a teeter-totter, you know how this stuff works. Weight on that side of a long thing is going to basically just snap this. Look at this. This is literally hanging on by a wing and a prayer. Come look at it on this side. You have no structure to support it. So like the very fact that this is getting any lifeblood at all is actually kind of shocking, to be honest. But that's going to be a problem. By the way, none of this that I'm saying is meant to throw shade at the new owners at all. Frankly, the people who owned these trees and this land before us did most of the damage early on in the trees' lives. I did the best I could to save them. But also, since then, they've not gotten a ton of care, and that's totally fine. These folks are not gardeners. They don't care about gardening, and that is 100% fine. Different strokes for different folks. Speaking of thriving though, I kind of knew that these little cherry trees were not going to be thriving in this location, but I also was like, well, we've got, you know, a few more inches of ground to plant in, and here we are. But yeah, this is also a classic do as I say and not as I do. Couple examples here. If I remember right, I think I had grafted like 3 or 4 different varieties of cherries onto this. So I'd be very interested to come back during fruiting time. In fact, not that I would ever tell anyone to do this, but I'm pretty sure that I grafted these varieties by going to my local home center with a pair of pruning shears, and I took a few clippings off of some overabundant trees. To be fair, I was pruning them so that they would be better suited once they were planted, but then I pocketed the clippings and used them for my grafting experiments. If you're gonna steal, make sure that you're paying it forward as you do that, my friends. Since I know the new owners definitely are not going to care or miss them, I'm gonna dig up a few little things and maybe try to restart some of Grandma's rhubarb back in Tennessee. Because raspberries are so easy to propagate, it's gonna be really easy for me to literally just take some cuttings of this, and I can actually stick these cuttings into the ground back in Tennessee and propagate a whole bunch more of these thornless raspberries back at home. Nobody will miss them. Home sweet home with all our little cuttings and seeds. The guy at TSA stopped me and said, "What is all of this stuff?" And I was like, "It's rhubarb roots and some other things, some plants for the garden." He's like, "Oh my stars, the root of a rhubarb plant. I cannot wait to tell all my coworkers this is the most exciting thing that's happened at the airport today." But being a true permaculturist, I didn't just have stuff growing in the garden. I planted food everywhere that we could fit it. And that leads us to this little driveway side orchard right here, which needs a little maintenance to recapture its life. Left to their own devices, all 3 of these fruit trees are destined for failure within about 5 years' time. And looking at them in this state could be very daunting. But if we were to actually think about what these trees need most, it's actually pretty dang simple to come at these, spend 10 minutes per tree, and get them back on the right track. This one right off the bat is going to turn into a giant lever if left to grow and bear fruit out that way. You can see it's already started to happen. Once this tree is leafed out, that's a giant wind sail that's going to want to push these 3 areas of the trunk apart, which will eventually open the tree up to decay and disease. So while it would be very shocking for the tree to come in basically at head height, find a bud spot, and literally just lop off the whole top part of this tree, that actually is going to be the best bet for ultimate survival for this tree to be able to not just have growth to recover and regrow, etc. But with a little wax cap on that cuts, plus the fact that we're going into spring now, this tree is not going to be opened up to nearly as much fungus and other disease as if you were to do this during the dormant season. But what we do want to do is make those heavy cuts before the tree puts a ton of energy into making flowers and leaves and buds. Then it'll actually be able to recover. This one is actually even easier. If we think about the fact that we don't ever want a fruit tree growing fruit where we can't reach to pick it, and also if we actually look at it, it's already got buds and leaves starting to come into fruition down here, but all of this new growth up here hasn't yet put a ton of energy into regrowing. So we could literally just basically reach up to our highest reach, find a spot where there's growth coming out of all these, and just do a little fancy bowl cut. This tree is actually in pretty great shape, but again, thinking about not wanting the tree to have a bunch of growth coming away from the actual stem of the tree or the trunk of the tree, we would want to come in here and just basically give this thing a nice rounding cut, which will make all of the fruit pickable. It'll again direct all of the tree's energy into creating flowers and buds and then fruit instead of growing more wood. Why would we want that? And ultimately it'll set the tree up for long-term success. Whenever we're thinking anything fruit tree, we always want to think about leverage. The farther you get out away from the stem and the more weight you put on it, the more likely you are to cause the trunk to split and the tree to collapse. One of the things, aside from the rhubarb, that is really, really nostalgic for me are these raspberry canes, because they have an incredible story that goes far beyond what even I did with them. These raspberry canes were planted originally in 1915 in Colville, Washington by my woodworking mentor, Frank's mother. When I met Frank, he was 94 years old, and at that time still working 8 hours a day in his wood shop, walking a few miles a day, and he had the life principle that when you stop moving, you start to die. So that's why he spent his time investing in youngins like me, teaching me everything that he knew about woodworking and beyond. And ironically, so much of this garden stuff happened because of Frank. But yeah, it's a pretty wild thing to think about these canes coming from stock that's over 100 years old, but with absolutely zero care. I bet the new owners of this property are getting a massive bumper crop, because these actually produce raspberries twice a year. And not just little raspberries, like gargantuan strawberry-sized raspberries. My mouth is literally watering just thinking about them. Behind the raspberries, you'll see this holly bush that I tried over and over and over to get rid of organically. And when I started trying to get rid of that thing, it was literally 30 feet high. I cut that buddy down with a chainsaw, dug up the roots. Yeah, a lot of life happened around trying to deal with those pokers. And I think the state of Washington might frown on me taking actual plants back to Tennessee with me, but boy howdy, I think I can smuggle some of these seeds back, and we'll take a little bit more of Frank's raspberries with us, and he'll live on. Man, I had so many good memories with Frank. Even on this property before we left, he taught me about everything from spinning wheels to woodworking to plumbing to gardening. 103 years, and he never slowed down. What a guy. Several years ago, Adam came running into our bedroom singing Miley Cyrus' Wrecking Ball, jumped onto the bed, and it smashed into 1,000 tiny pieces. And ever since then, we've been sleeping on a mattress on the floor, because while we absolutely could buy a bed, why would we when I am perfectly capable of building one myself. Several years ago, I milled up some beautiful cherry and came up with the perfect design for the bed that I had fully intended to reveal in this video, but the cobbler's children have no shoes, and our mattress is still here on the floor. But we are still sleeping in style, in fact on a new Brooklyn bedding mattress, because Adam recently threw out his back and was suffering from horrible back pain. So he went onto the Brooklyn bedding website and took the sleeping quiz and found out that he needed to have a firm support mattress. But of course, because I am a much smaller human and I like to sleep on my side, I like a medium firm mattress. How can we find compromise, you may ask? I'm so glad you did. There's actually 2 extra long twin mattresses that make up our California king bed so that Adam can sleep with his firm comfort level and I can sleep with my medium firm comfort level. And huge bonus, if I'm ever mad at Adam, I can push those 2 bad boys apart and all of a sudden we're in an episode of I Love Lucy. We have been using Brooklyn bedding for several years and have been slowly replacing every mattress we own with a Brooklyn bedding mattress because they are far superior quality to anything else that we would be able to get at that price point. Brooklyn bedding will ship your mattress from Arizona directly to your front door for free in the US in a compressed little box that you can very easily set up yourself. They have so many different options for so many different body styles and sleeping styles, and a 120-day sleep guarantee. So if you don't like your mattress, you can send it back. Another thing I really like about Brooklyn bedding mattresses is that they don't have fiberglass in them, so that's a huge plus. If you're looking for a new mattress and a better night's sleep, check out brooklynbedding.com. Click the links below and use the code Anne of all trades at checkout for 30% off of your brand new mattress. I can see my apple tree is still producing a lot of apples. This is the most prolific apple tree ever. It made almost Honeycrisp-esque apples that were so delicious, and we would pick hundreds and hundreds of pounds of apples off this tree every year, which was super wild because this tree has actually, structurally speaking, a lot of problems, but it sure did produce. We used to have neighborhood parties with all of our nieces and nephews and the neighborhood kids, and we'd do cider pressing, and Howdy got the start of his barrel-chested figure by sampling the apples from this tree. Oh, we have a puppy visitor. Hi, buddy. Hi, buddy. You wanna come see my kiwis? Hi, bud. Hello. I'm very pleased to see my garden set's still out here. I believe I found this in the trash at Adam's mom's house. One of my very first forging projects. This is an AOAT original, forged in my blacksmith shop right over there when I first got started. A little plant identifier, or row identifier probably, for the garden. Hiding behind my figs is this beautiful hardy kiwi plant that joins its many friends along this fence line, but this is definitely the thickest, juiciest boy. And of course, my fig plants that were little sticks when they started and now have turned into full-blown fig trees. And actually the new owner told me that there has been so many figs every year. She actually made fig jam last year and sent it to all their friends and relatives for Christmas, which really warms my heart because, you know, she said she's not usually a jam homesteader type person, but where there's a fig, there's a way. Look at these monsters. All these grapes, by the way, came from cuttings, again, from Frank's house. Propagation Nation, my friends. This is great. I truly cannot believe how big these fig trees are. This is wild. And, you know, again, when you plant the right thing in the right climate, you really don't have to take care of it for it to truly thrive. This place was home for us for 5 of our most formative years of our marriage. But now it's someone else's home. And they've done a whole bunch of different stuff. In fact, I'm sure some of you at least are curious about what the rest of this whole place looks like. Like what happened to the barn and the tiny house that my best friend and I built for my mom, and what it actually is now. You are truly not gonna believe what this place has become. Let's go take a look. It's a dog ranch now. A huge thank you to the fine folks at Southpaw Dog Ranch for letting us come and invade their space for the last 2 days. Also, if you need a place to board your doggy in Woodinville, Washington, this is the spot. Here's the old barn. You'll never believe what they did upstairs. This is so cool. I think we're supposed to come in and out quick. We're very gate conscious. Nothing's changed. So this used to be our hay storage up here, but it's become such a cool little office, puppy hangout. They've got a little mini kitchen here. I truly cannot believe we didn't think to do this when we were here. This is so awesome. I also don't remember there being quite this much room for activities up here. They put in a little window up here, little fireplace. It's so cozy. So then if we come down the stairs here, this used to be where we kept our goats and our alpacas, but now we've got ourselves a little doggy Airbnb. Look at this. Each one of these little rooms has got a little dog bed, a cozy little spot, some paintings on the wall. The ambiance is real, folks. The very first time I ever delivered baby goats, it was right in that corner right there. My very first Angora goat had her very first 2 babies here, and Adam called her from then on the Trojan goat. He said, "You snuck in even more goats, and on my birthday, no less." Things are looking a little different these days, but I feel like their dogs have it a whole lot better than our goats ever did, to say the least, although they probably would have eaten everything in there. I remember putting these doors and these stalls in, but once again, things have massively improved for the dogs over where my donkeys and my alpacas used to eat their breakfast every morning. They've got a little chase lounge, storage for all their dog biscuits. Now here we've got a fireplace and a TV to watch our dog cartoons, ocean views. In here is where my friend Clint used to bring us all of the hay for the animals, and he would help me stack it in here. Now apparently we've got a nice putting green. It is just wild what they've done since we were here. So cool. Oh, I learned how to give sutures to an animal right here on this floor. I learned how to castrate our alpaca, Ike, after he'd procreated once, and we wanted to keep him from doing that with his daughter moving forward, Dalai Lama. I remember my favorite picture I ever took of one of my alpacas, little Ikey, was right through that window right there. Hi, I'm Anne of All Trades, and today I'm going to tell you about how my best friend Wilkerdoos and I spent 7 days building this awesome tiny house. As we continue to walk down Raspberry Lane, I'm also really pleased at how well the trellis system that we set up to contain the raspberries has actually held up. Because yeah, the raspberries are growing out of the trellised area, but you still have a definite path. I am a little sad to see that peach tree, but we'll go back there and actually take a closer look before we talk about why. Behind me, you'll see our beautiful, easy DIY fence is still standing. And very straightly, might I add. This actually used to be my garden pathway, and it's going to be a little more difficult to get through there at the moment. Oh, the old chicken coop. Hi, I'm Anne of All Trades, and the chicken coop is finally done. No chickens in there now. I mean, ironically, it's kind of similar to our place and our chicken situation at the moment. Okay, we're going to be doing a little bushwhacking in here. I said I was a little sad to see the peach tree in this state, and that's mostly because I planted this peach tree and picked 80 delicious peaches off of it 2 years after planting the stick in the ground. I had very similar success with this exact variety of peach tree, frost peach in Tennessee, but this tree is really struggling. It's been poorly pruned, poorly maintained. It has lots of rotten wood. It's not getting what it needs. There's been quite a bit of girdling that's gone on due to getting caught in wires or some interesting non-pruning things that have been happening over here. I'm not sure what they were doing or why, but there you go. Much to my genuine grief, my artichoke forest that used to be here is no longer here. And that is actually really, really sad because I was hoping to come harvest some artichokes because 'tis the season right now. When I talked to the new owner about what he would do if he were starting this garden back over from scratch, he said immediately that he would rototill and then add some fertilizer and kind of went into the conventional gardening thing. But here's the thing. This soil doesn't need fertilizer. And if you've ever dealt with buttercups before, you also know that tilling them back into the soil is actually kind of one of the last things we want to do because tilling buttercups makes them spread. Clearly the new owners don't have a ton of time, energy, or desire to put into working hard in the garden every weekend. So the easiest prescription for them would be to teach them a little bit about lazy gardening. If we were to suddenly move back here and I wanted to have an abundant, thriving garden again within just a matter of a few weeks, also recognizing the fact that I'm pregnant and I don't want to take on a huge physically involved project, here's what I'd do. Right off the bat, I would order a soil test and 2 bags of Mineral Light from Redmond. Knowing that it would take a few days for those things to get delivered and I would want to get right on getting on things in the garden, that same day I would order 2 compost thermometers. I would start making calls to my arborist friends in the area asking to get a couple chip drops to the area. I would call the furniture store that's right down the street and I would get as many big sheets of clean, clear cardboard as they would let me load into my truck. I would run down to the hardware store to get a hay rake and a wheelbarrow. Hay rakes are the absolute best tool when it comes to turning mulch and compost. I would then call the local cabinet shop and ask them if I could take as many bags of planer and jointer shavings as they would give me. I'd call the local diner and ask them to save all of their eggshells for me for a week. I'd call the local coffee shop and get as many coffee grounds as they would give me. I'd ask Adam to mow the lawn and save all of the grass clippings. Because there isn't livestock on the farm anymore, I'd also call the local horse farm and ask them if I could bring my truck by for a couple truckloads of manure. And then I would use the horse manure, the wood chips, and the eggshells to start an 18-day Berkeley-style compost system to top dress all of the beds after they were done solarizing. I already have a couple videos showing you how to make compost on the channel, so we're not gonna go into details there. But then I would also take the grass clippings, the coffee grounds, and the jointer and planer shavings from the cabinet shop to make another compost pile that would be used specifically for seed germination and would basically remediate any of the issues of potentially having really big wood chips that hadn't had any time to break down straight from the arborists. On the areas of the garden that are too big and too overgrown to think about doing anything about right away, I would grab some old tarps and some of the old random bricks that happen to be laying around this garden, lay them on top of those garden beds to leave them to solarize indefinitely until I had time to deal with them. Then I'd start laying down cardboard and weighing it down with arborist chips everywhere that I wanted to reestablish garden pathways, and even on some of the garden beds that I thought I might get to a little quicker than the ones that had tarps on them. And truly, if I were to do all the things that I just laid out, within 18 days, I'd have 2 sets of really good compost, one for seed germination and one for bed repairal. That's not a word, but you get me. I'd have a really good head start solarizing all of the really, really weedy areas. I'd have started to reclaim some of the actual growing areas and the pathways. And then by June, taking this garden one little section at a time, weekend by weekend, I could have this garden completely reclaimed. If I were tasked with revisiting this space, it would initially probably be a little overwhelming because I, as the one who planted a lot of it, know how many precious perennial plants are actually mixed into some of the annuals I would plant in these rows. And my first thought would be, oh, I want to make sure to save all of that stuff. And if I didn't know all of that was here and wasn't trying to go through and save little things like these mustard greens, I see some really well-established chives doing their thing. My breath is gonna be amazing. And honestly, these are doing so well that if I did wanna come in here with a tarp or cardboard and wood chips to solarize this, I'd probably just grab my shovel dig up this whole section of chives and put it in a pot until I had a good place to relocate it. One handy favor I did for future Anne coming back to revisit this garden is everywhere that I planted perennials, I put these fences as indicators of there's something important growing here. Don't add cardboard or mulch on top of it. So if we pull some of this growth back here, we see a sage plant that, yeah, is a little worse for the wear, but is still absolutely putting on healthy growth. So we just saved ourselves 40 bucks. Look at that. It's ready to go make a roast chicken right now. As we walk through here, the ground is like a pillow. We don't want to disrupt or squish down or do anything more than what's already here. This is very clearly very fertile, airy soil already, and all the fertilizer that we need is right here in the weeds. Right next to these strawberries, we have some plantain. This will be excellent to pull up and put in our fertilizer bucket. We'll grab some handfuls of buttercup and clover that's growing amongst it. Oh, we've got some clingers here. Farmer Adam, do you remember what burdock does?
The soil fixer.
What does it indicate?
Compact soil.
It indicates compacted soil, that's right. And that actually makes sense because where is it growing? Not in the middle of the garden beds, but actually out at these edges in the pathways where tiny little Anne footprints walked for years and years, compacting the soil in the pathways. Right next to our mustard greens we found, we've got some cut leaf geranium here, dead nettle, hairy bittercress, some of the actual roots of this burdock, and a little of the soil that might come with it too. Oh, very conveniently there's some dandelions in there, even better. Now as we're cleaning up the garden, we're just gonna keep adding more and more weeds and different varieties of things we find in the garden to this. We'll find a plastic bag to cover it, and all of a sudden we'll have our own homemade weed fertilizer, a brewing in the sun. It starts to become usable after a handful of days, but the longer it putrefies, the more concentrated and better it gets. So we'll ultimately dilute it and then use it to water our newly fixed garden beds, and that will add all kinds of nutrition to our soil without having to spend a penny. Then, when we get our soil test back from Redmond, we will do whatever the soil test prescribed we need to do, which will probably, very likely mean put some compost on, add the mineralite that we already ordered, and we'll be off to the races. I'm sure at least a few people are gonna ask if it makes me sad to come back and see the garden not gardening anymore. And the answer is a very simple no. I became who I am now in this place, and I am so excited to raise our son in Tennessee. Oh, here come the tears. You told me they were gonna come. And honestly, like, I made this place for the kids we thought we were gonna have here, but they never came, and honestly, it was empty without them, and so it wasn't hard to go. It's not actually sad to be back, and the funny thing is, I'm not even sad to see the garden or anything else, like, in a different state than we left it, because this is just stuff. This is the land that turned me into the person that I am now. I learned everything that I needed for the next piece of my journey here, and it taught me everything that it had to teach me, and then it opened the door for us to go somewhere else to learn new things. And that is what the good stuff of life is really about.